Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Giant's Healthy Innovators Live TV. My name is Barry Shrier and I'm your host. I'm the founder of Giant Health. Giant is an acronym which stands for Global Innovation and New Technology. We are a global community of nearly 200,000 people, and we are everybody around the world whose business is healthcare, technology, and innovation. What we do every week is we produce these weekly episodes of Healthy Innovators Live TV, and we're bringing together the most interesting and dynamic and successful and ambitious people working in the forefront of innovation in the world of healthcare, addressing some of the most important challenges in society and healthcare, and coming up with valuable new technology and social solutions to address these great big challenges. So I'm very, very proud to have three amazing people joining us this week. Before I introduce them, I just want to thank our sponsors. Thank you very much to Vodafone Business and Barclays Bank International, and our knowledge partner, McKinsey & Company. We love working with our collaborators and sponsors, and I just want to say thank you to you guys. We value your support, and we're very proud to name you as important collaborators. Anyhow, hello to everybody on the call today. Thank you very much to all of our listeners. And if you have anything that you want to contribute to these shows, please contact us. Our website is www.giant.health, and we'd love to hear from you. So first of all, we have Sarah Hill. Hi, Sarah. Hello. How are you today?
Hello. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation to share.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really glad to have you on board. Tell us briefly what you are doing and what's an example of a big challenge in healthcare and society that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sarah Hill. I am the CEO of Healium. Healium is spelled like healing, Healium, and it's a virtual and augmented reality intervention for the self-management of stress and the improvement of human performance. So these are cyberdelics, if you will, drugless, non-harmful coping mechanisms that have the ability to quickly downshift the nervous system. And what we're doing is using biometric data. So anything that captures data, whether that be a smartwatch or an EEG meditation headband, we're hardware agnostic. We don't make the hardware, we make the software. And we're allowing you to control these virtual worlds with your own brain patterns and heart rate. So think of us like an immersive media channel for your wearables that is for the self-management of stress and the improvement of human performance and sleep.
Wow, that's incredibly interesting and impressive. Thank you very much for sharing that. With regard to the theme of stress, is that a problem these days?
Yes, this is the stress Olympics right now, right? In the aftermath of COVID, and not everyone is trained for it. This is a mental health emergency. Calls to hotlines have doubled. And so people are looking for some drugless, non-harmful coping mechanisms that allows them to self-manage their anxiety. You reduce stress, you improve working memory, which reduces the likelihood of errors and poor management decisions, and it increases your human performance. So it's a huge problem, a $300 billion profit and people killer.
Wow. Well, that's extremely interesting. I mean, not interesting in a good way regarding the challenges of stress, but incredibly important in society. So we're very glad to have you joining us today and looking forward to hearing more about it. And Tafi, hello, how are you doing today?
Hi, yes, I'm very good, thank you.
Excellent. So Tafi, please, if you could briefly introduce yourself, and we'd love to hear from your perspective, what's an example of a big challenge in society and healthcare, and what are you doing about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tafi Mazikana, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Vimbo Health. And our vision is essentially for digital therapeutics to be available in Africa that are made for Africa, so that mental health care becomes affordable and also becomes more accessible. So digital therapeutics is thankfully a growing area. There's a lot of people now taking, I guess, a place within the scene. And our interest is to make sure that Africa doesn't get left behind, so to speak, in this revolution. So that's essentially what we're working on, self-guided digital therapeutics with a focus initially on anxiety and depression, looking at those base sort of behavioral health intervention.
Yes.
And yeah, as I said, a big challenge is, of course, before the pandemic, there was the mental health pandemic already. And as Sarah mentioned, that it's only been heightened to, and I like that analogy of Olympic levels, because it really is. And so, yeah, so it's a Africa has the issue of already high prevalence, and then this issue being topped up on top of that. So yeah,
Sure.
Very important.
Yes, well, absolutely. Well, we're very proud to have you on today's episode and very keen to learn more about that. It's such an important issue, and glad to learn more from you about that in this discussion. Thank you. And likewise, Sean, hello, and how are you doing today? If you could introduce yourself, and we're talking about big challenges. What's another example of a big challenge in healthcare and society that we can address?
I'm very well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. We're at Kuma Ventures. We're really investing in what we see as the next stage of integrative care, and what we're really doing right now is trying to solve for a problem where 50% of people currently don't respond to the treatments that they're given, mostly those being medical prescriptions. And if you speak to people who are prescribed antidepressants when they're teenagers, more often than not, in 2 or 3 decades' time, they'll still be on the same drugs. And what we're trying to help is the development of a larger pharmaceutical toolkit for people to address mental health care challenges in different ways and in more holistic ways, and most importantly, I think, more individualized ways. And what we're doing right now is raising the second tranche of our first fund. We're a £20 million fund, primarily focused on psychedelic therapies, although we're investing alongside in clinics and digital therapies as well. And all of those different aspects of the sector really feed into one system. And that's, really for us, something that's incredibly important, is that alongside these drugs, we're developing the digital tools that are able to make sense of them within patient populations, stratify our patient populations correctly, but also assist with preparatory and integrative care.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, Sean, thank you for the introduction. And this is very, very interesting. This theme, which has come up from all three of you, is absolutely fascinating. The theme of the digital toolkit and the scenario of the questionable efficacy of drugs, and yet surely we live in the era of drug success. Is it not the case that in the past 100 years, the invention and development and regulation and production and distribution of drugs has had a profoundly valuable impact on the health of societies around the world? However, they have their limitations. So, Sarah, from your perspective, what's wrong with drugs? Why can't we just build more, better drugs?
Yeah, and I will be the first person to tell you I'm not throwing stones at the pharmaceutical industry or drugs. People need a choice. And specifically for our products, Healium, it's not meant to be a replacement for psychotropic medication or professional counseling, which is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. Yes. when you have anxiety. But we need to be thinking about some complements and some things that you can try perhaps before you have a pharmaceutical intervention. And not everyone in this world who struggles with anxiety needs a psychotropic medication. That's a decision that you make together with your healthcare professional. So in light of the shortage of counselors and the epidemic proportions, and how the fact that not everyone who struggles with anxiety actually seeks treatment, we need to be finding some drugless, non-harmful coping mechanisms that not have necessarily the propensity to replace psychotropic medication, which has a role in some individuals' care, but perhaps as a complement. Because when you reduce anxiety, you increase the effectiveness of certain medications. So I don't see them as two necessarily polar opposites. I see them as tangentially related, and most certainly a choice for the healthcare consumer to make. Am I going to use a pharmaceutical intervention? Am I going to use a digiceutical? And what we're seeing bubble up, not just with digital therapeutics, but digiceuticals, which are underneath a layer of digital therapeutics in the wellness sector, that are not for a treatment of anxiety, depression, but therefore the self-management and self-awareness of these conditions.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for that clarification. I certainly agree with you entirely. Always good to try and figure out how to frame this in the if you will, the history and the traditional situation that we find ourselves in regarding drugs in the pharma industry. It also strikes me, of course, that in many circumstances, if you have a patient with a condition that is being treated by drugs, if they stop taking the drug, will they have been cured or not? And the vibe that I get from a lot of conversations with people like you guys is that the answer is, well, not necessarily. If right now you're taking a drug for a physical condition, like helping you to manage your insulin levels as a diabetic, if you stop taking those drugs, you're not automatically going to be cured from that original condition. Whereas if you have digital cognitive behavioral interventions, you might end up being able to amend your diet, your lifestyle, your exercise regime to be able to reprogram yourself to manage your diabetes and your insulin without having to be drug dependent. So I think there's an awful lot of potential with digital therapeutics, which you don't necessarily see with traditional drugs, which is just, I guess, an interesting aside there. Tafi, how about from your perspective? Something else that Sarah hinted at, which is the scalability of digital applications. I suppose the manufacture and distribution of drugs is not necessarily as scalable as digital solutions. Is that right? And does that relate to what you guys are involved in?
Yeah, I think as soon as you're going into the digital realm, the thing we want to leverage the most is the scalability and the ability to just reach a large number of people. So in Africa, we're looking at a huge proportion of untreated people. So they don't have access to the first step in care simply because it's too expensive or there's not enough facilities in that town or region that they live in. So scale is, of course, one of the first things that we want to approach. But I think it's not a versus the pharmaceutical industry, because the pharmaceutical industry has in many ways mastered distribution at scale, and a lot of the referral pathways that we talk about, especially when we start to talk about digital therapeutics as opposed to well-being within the domain and network of pharmaceuticals. So it'll be quite interesting to see what role pharmaceuticals start to play within digital therapeutics, leveraging their existing channels, as well as looking towards prescription digital therapeutics. So I know Novartis, for example, has been very active in that space, and it will be interesting to see sort of how we all work together.
Absolutely. Sean, what's your take on this from the perspective of the investor? Are we seeing simply the rollout of new products on a comparable business model to the pharma model? Or are you seeing new business models, and are there therefore new and different challenges for the professional investors like yourself regarding how to analyze digital therapies as a business and investment opportunity?
Yeah, I think we're in a current age where the barrier to entry is quite low, and there is a very it's a saturated community, and it's definitely a community that is getting a lot of attention from investor capital, which I think is fantastic to see, and people are making use of that. We've also seen governments really get behind these sorts of businesses. We've seen the Future Fund in the UK, we've seen Angel Co, and a lot of very exciting investments from that side, which I think indicates the level of need for these treatments and these new protocols. And for us, the exciting thing as an investor is for psychedelics, what we're trying to do is essentially build a whole new treatment paradigm, and an alternative to SSRIs and benzodiazepines. And what we need to do is, because of the very unique psychedelic experience, which is undergone with a professionally supervised psychotherapist in the room, usually with ketamine or MDMA or some other psychotropic drug, we need to have solutions that can help us make sense of those treatments, because people are not in a state where they're often able to give feedback in a very eloquent way. And so digital biomarkers become incredibly effective in helping us understand patient outcomes, and also helping us understand how to create clinical trials in the first place. So that's very exciting, because we're at the cusp where people who are treating patients are starting to get the same level of insight as researchers used to 10 years ago. And I think that's really broadening access for a large amount of people, and I think helping a lot to develop bespoke therapies. And I think, just touching on the prescribed, digiceuticals, if we want to call them that, I think we've looked very closely at those. One of our investments is a company called Sana Health, which has just received breakthrough status from the FDA for the treatment of fibromyalgia.
Nice.
And that's through manipulating the EEG and your brain waves to help you reduce your stress and tension. And I think there's a lot to be said for the use of digiceuticals before trying a pharmaceutical intervention, especially a psychedelic intervention. But even during the psychedelic intervention, for us, we need to make sense of that. And most importantly, the integrative care afterwards. And we've seen a lot of really fantastic development in the area, similar to Vimbo Health, where integrative solutions are helping people make sense of their psychedelic experiences and helping give them the guidance and support they need to really get to that underlying trauma. But in terms of the saturated space, I think that's only a good sign. What we've seen generally is a very high bar and a high caliber of people entering the space, as opposed to some of the other sectors we've been involved in. And so that's been very, very encouraging for us.
Excellent. No, that's very informative and extremely interesting. Sean, you touched on the theme of clinical trials. Does that overlap, Sarah, with your world? And are you involved in regulatory approval? And what kind of, if yes, what kind of challenges have you had there?
So we're involved in a dozen clinical trials, actually, all around the world for a variety of different use cases with a variety of different institutions. And so not all digiceuticals are on a regulatory path. At its core, these are products that are dealing with the self-management of stress. So not making medical claims, again, not a replacement for psychotropic medication. These are training tools and self-awareness tools. Drugless, non-harmful coping mechanisms, which according to the FDA, at least here in the US, are not regulated because they're not tied to any medical claims. And so that's probably, at least in our shop's definition, the difference between digital therapeutics and digiceuticals. Digiceuticals are going more towards the wellness route, not necessarily being dedicated to physician's office or prescriptions, whereas the digital therapeutics do have more of a regulatory path.
Oh, that's very helpful. I'll be honest, I wasn't familiar with the phrase, the word that you used, digiceuticals before.
Yeah, so, VR-ceuticals is another term, using virtual reality as a digital drug.
Yes.
AR-ceuticals, similarity as well. This is media.
Yes.
Being able to shift brain patterns.
Yes. And so if it's a digiceutical, for example, is that word fairly clearly relating to something which is not in the regulated pharmaceutical environment type of regulatory approval and prescription situation? So does digiceuticals mean something which is more towards wellness? Is that correct?
Yes, in our definition, but as we all know, everyone identifies a DTX and a digiceutical differently among different shops. Yep. So, but historically, that has been items in the wellness sector. So you think of nutraceuticals, for instance, kind of like that, but it's with digital media, like virtual, mixed, and augmented reality.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. No, that's a helpful clarification. I'm sure our listeners would benefit from that. Thank you. So, Tafi, tell us a little bit more about your business and what are some of your challenges as somebody in the forefront of the applications of new technology to address important healthcare issues?
Yeah, sure. So we're in that digital therapeutic space, although it's so interesting, the spectrum of the space as it opens up and we understand more, and
yes.
it's very much I feel like we're at the forefront of something, so it's exciting to hear sort of Sarah talk and
yes.
And share those aspects. So we are planted within the digital therapeutic space and looking towards that therapeutic aspect of depression and anxiety, and of course there is, as Sean also mentioned, a bar that we feel we need to sort of work towards in terms of being safe, in terms of proving efficacy. And so we've been conducting our own research on our platform, and we have some partnerships in the pipeline to do research in other countries, just focusing on our continent here.
Nice.
So that's our focus, really, to provide those digital therapeutics so people can, through the digital platform, find help and find treatment for depression and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And we're very encouraged by what we're seeing coming out of our pilot research study, where we've achieved within a version 1 recovery levels that are very comparable with Western models that are more established.
Wow.
We've got great technology, which we feel is well suited for us here.
Yes.
So we're very enthusiastic, and also we've got great partnerships on the ground here. So we're looking towards that sort of more launch phase and partnership phase, and really leveraging everything that we've been developing.
Brilliant. Do you have a product that's on the market right now, or are you on the way to that?
Yeah, so we're soon to be on the market. We've, as I said, just gone through the phase of getting that research data to make sure that we are safe to use, and also, of course, working with people through the other aspects of regulatory, etc. So,
nice.
So yes, we are now positioned at that point.
Yes. How are you finding the relations with regulators, and do they understand where you're coming from as a digital innovator?
I think it's interesting because it's a new area, so there's a level of understanding that's still to be gone through. Luckily, we have some great consultant and legal assistance, which I think is helping us to cut through a lot of that understanding. But I would consider that to be something that we're in progress with, but obviously take a position of being keen to do.
Absolutely, yes. I'm intrigued about the local nature of healthcare, and how, for everybody on this call, you have products which, of course, could have vast international, quite literally global applications, but we have extremely local healthcare, don't we, with government regulations and laws and policies that are unique in every country. And how does that affect your perspective, Sean, in terms of, are you, for example, investing exclusively in a particular geographic area? Or are you bothered by the geographical complexities of healthcare around the world?
That is actually a fantastic question. Regulation kind of runs everything that we do, because we're investing in novel treatments which require, first of all, clinical trials to be successful, and then secondly, rescheduling to allow for medical application of those compounds. So for us, really, it's quite extraordinary seeing the level of global capital flowing into the psychedelic sector, and yet only a few countries really showing that they're taking the step forward on the regulatory pathway. Luckily, we've had the FDA really leading the charge in this industry, providing breakthrough status to ketamine, MDMA, and psilocybin. And that's been fantastic in helping really develop a huge research bank and a big commercial operation in the US.
Yes.
However, what has been interesting from a psychedelics perspective is that we've had all of the research, or majority of the research, being conducted here in Europe and in the UK. And so for us, we're here in the UK, we have access to UK institutions and Dutch institutions, and it so happens that governments here have been more liberal in the research of these compounds, which has allowed for a larger talent pool. Sure. And similarly, I must be honest, on the valuation standpoint, we seem to see slightly more reasonable valuations in Europe and in the UK than we do in North America. Right. Particularly due to hype and PR around psychedelics, but also across the spectrum, really, on digital tools as well. And yeah. So we like to operate here where we have boots on the ground, really. But I must say we're agnostic, and there are just such extraordinary things coming out of really all corners of the globe right now. It's hard to keep up. Yeah. I mean, when I saw Tafi's company, I got so proud as a South African, and as my family is Zimbabwean as well, so it was really cool to see. And when I saw Sarah's company, I thought so much about so many of our portfolio companies which are focusing on VR, and things like that. So I think it's very tough to have a myopic focus as an investor right now because of the globalized state we're in, and especially in digital. I mean, the whole amazing thing, as you point out rightly about digital, is we have the ability to scale across the globe and to reach as many people as we possibly can.
Yes.
So when we're looking at the digital side, we're totally agnostic.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very interesting. Couple points there. I mean, of course, you're a professional investor, so I'm sure you're always undervaluing all of the stuff that us entrepreneurs are coming up with. But we can help you to work on that one. And no, pardon me for being cheeky.
I like that.
Sean, you mentioned this phrase which some of our listeners might not understand. Could you elaborate? Did you talk about something called breakthrough status, which is something coming out of the FDA in America? Could you just elaborate on that a little bit for our listeners?
Yes, sorry. So breakthrough status is afforded to certain compounds, or in some cases devices as well, which help a certain indication achieve a result. And that is an indication typically where there are treatment-resistant patients, or large amount of treatment-resistant patients. So the current problem with depression and anxiety, or depression mainly, is that we have a very high treatment-resistant population of roughly 33%. And what the FDA is saying by providing breakthrough status to a particular compound is they're saying this compound holds extraordinary potential to treat that indication, and so should be given a faster route through a regulatory process, particularly on the administrative side, not so much on the clinical trial side,
right.
In order to get it to market, or to give it a shot at getting to market sooner than it would otherwise be able to.
Okay. Oh, no, that's extremely interesting and quite relevant for the discussion here about digital innovations, obviously. Thank you for sharing that. Well, look, I'd love to hear more about you guys individually. So if you don't mind, Sarah, tell us please a little bit about yourself and your background, and how did you get to where you are currently?
Yeah, so I am a former television journalist. My background is in media. Essentially, Healium is media. It's just therapeutic media for the self-management of stress and anxiety. So I covered a lot of trauma. Spent 25 years covering rapes, murders, homicides. We went in with the trauma teams in the aftermath of the tsunami in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. And ultimately, that media diet that I chose to consume made me sick. So, an inability to sleep, which leads to other health conditions and mental health conditions. And so developed Healium for me, as well as the millions of people who struggle with stress and anxiety, or who psychotropic medication might not be a good fit for.
Well, that's very interesting. And I think it's not unusual, is it, for a successful entrepreneur and business leader and innovator like yourself to have had a personal experience which gives you the drive and the motivation and the ambition. So sorry that those experiences caused you the anxieties and the challenges, but in a way, there's a silver lining to the story, isn't there, with what you're doing now, which is so impressive and important.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. It's a common theme among journalists, first responders, nurses, people who are covering trauma, that secondary trauma that ultimately impact not just your physical body, but your mental well-being as well.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And being at the coal face, so to speak, you're extremely well placed to figure out what the most effective solutions might be. So that's very impressive. And likewise, Tafi, of course, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you and your background, and how did you get to where you are right now?
Was that to me?
Hello, can you hear me, Tafi?
Yes, okay, fantastic. Sorry, there was a slight break.
That's okay.
Yeah, so it's truly inspirational. Similar to Sarah, I come from the point of view of being a service user myself. And my background is actually in banking and finance over in London, and working within the banking sector, managing programs. So I came into this after being treated for my own severe anxiety and depression through a digital therapeutic. And that was way back in 2019. I can be honest in saying that I had very low expectations for this. I was the embodiment of not understanding mental health and also suffering from the stigma that's around it. Yeah. And I chose the digital option that was given to me primarily because I was due to travel and I just wasn't going to be around to do a face-to-face consultation, even if I wanted to. And I was completely blown away by the results. It worked for me. I could feel immediately, after I learned a little, I wanted to know more and learn a lot. And it sort of stuck me in to wanting to know more about mental health and my mental health and how it applies to me, not just awareness, but how does this apply to me?
Yes.
And so, I went into that phase of being quite an advocate, but also knowing that in Africa, there is nothing available, because I would push this link into everybody's faces, and a lot of people were not interested or too busy. And I'm thinking, well, it's for free, whereas in Africa, people don't have access to anything at all. So it just was in my heart to do something, and came to a meeting of mine with my co-founder, who is specialized in this space and someone who I've known for a long time, but until now didn't really know how to ask the right questions as to what she does. So it was all just sort of meant to be in that way, and that's how we formed up.
Tafi, thank you for sharing. Do you feel as someone who has come into the healthcare industry from outside of the industry, rather than being an insider, for example, rather than you starting your career as a clinician, for example, how has that had an impact? And do you think that there's a good element to that, you being an outsider in the health industry?
Yeah, I think there is, because my co-founder is an insider and I'm an outsider. So if she needs any feedback, quite obviously I am candidate A. And also, I think the service user perspective is something that's important from a point of view of understanding why people go cold and why people drop out of interventions, from a point of view of just having a different perspective. I think it is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree entirely. I think that fresh perspective is potentially quite valuable, but it comes with its challenges, doesn't it, regarding not having a foundation understanding of healthcare and biology and these types of things.
I think definitely, and I do believe there has to be some balance of expertise and interest within I guess any organization. So it does help to sort of bring that, I guess.
So we've been talking about some incredibly interesting challenges in healthcare, some issues relating to mental health and digital innovation and in digital applications and interventions, and likewise, Sean, the application of novel compounds and psychedelics. A lot of this reminds me of the fact that for the past several hundred years, we've had the development of what you might call the orthodox healthcare system, which of course arguably is a sick care system, isn't it? It's not healthcare, it's sick care. You only contact your doctor when you're unwell. You dial 911 or 999 when there's a problem. But that's not sustainable, is it? My understanding is that the challenges in society, the large new healthcare issues relating to demographic changes and socio changes like aging, new diseases, type 2 diabetes, obesity, these things are growing and growing. So the challenges in healthcare are themselves growing, and there's no answer in terms of, well, let's just have more hospitals, let's have more doctors, let's have more nurses, let's have more equipment inside every ambulance. That's not the answer, is it? We need to figure out how do we nudge society towards wellness and towards concerning ourselves with our own well-being. So, Sean, does that resonate with you at all? And does that have any impact on your investment thesis, or is there plenty to do in terms of just creating better sick care solutions?
I love the way that you phrase that. I think everything that we're doing is trying to stop the current modus operandi, which, if I will say so myself, is really papering over the cracks with SSRIs and benzodiazepines. And I think at the moment, without getting too Freudian, people don't have the opportunity to really delve into the source of their trauma and deal with what is causing their addictions, their behavioral issues, their OCD, their PTSD, or their depression. And when you come to a point where there are no treatments that are currently giving you any help,
Yes.
And you can only paper over the cracks so much before the addiction takes its own grip on you.
Yes.
I think, and the limited treatment options because of the costs of traditional talking therapy, and prescribers, at least in the UK, not very willing to prescribe that, leaves a lot of people without anything. And when you get to that point, I think psychedelics offer an incredible ability to reset the brain and to kind of, allow people to delve into the childhood trauma that may be influencing not only their, physical symptoms, but also their emotional symptoms.
Yes.
And for me, that's incredibly important. So, when I first started looking at Robin Carhart-Harris's research in 2006 on the default mode network and how psychedelics essentially reset the brain in a sense that you can reform neurological pathways and reform positive habits.
Yes.
I was incredibly excited, but obviously going hand in hand with that is the tools to reform those habits in a positive way, because psychedelics aren't just a silver bullet that's going to give you the answer, and we very much are aware of that.
Yeah.
So what we don't want to be doing is papering over the cracks once again by turning these into addictive or drugs that require a lot of consistent use. And that's the
Yes.
amazing thing about psychedelic doses, is typically a bolus dose will last 3 months before you have to go back again. And there's a lot of care that goes in between that. And I think nudging people towards that kind of care is incredibly important, because that's the wellness aspect that really allows us to find that balance in our lives and find the thing that will give us harmony. And that's really where digital solutions are playing the most incredible role. And so, yeah, incredibly excited to be a part of this new, Neo-Kuma is ancient Greek for new wave. And so, this is really the new wave of wellness where we look at the source of the problem.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. No, I didn't realize about your name and the Greek origins. No, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, well, look, you guys, I'm sorry to say we only have a little bit of time left, which is a shame, because I wish we could continue this discussion for at least another hour or two. I'm finding all of this incredibly interesting and informative and important regarding the challenges that we do have in society and how we're going to address them. But in summary, Sarah, is there anything that you want to ask of our community? Are you looking to raise money? Have you got a new product launch coming up? Any white papers? Are you recruiting? What can our community do to help and to support you?
All of the above that you mentioned. We're also looking for Unity developers as well, full stack developers. So definitely reach out to us. You can download our apps. They're free on iOS and Android. It has an augmented reality component as well as a virtual reality component.
Nice.
And just telling your community to remember that your thoughts do have power to control things, not only in the virtual world, but in the real world as well.
Wow. Say that again, because that's incredibly appropriate.
Yeah, we work with EEG, brain patterns. So your thoughts have power to control things, not only in the virtual world, virtual or augmented reality, but in the real world as well.
Brilliant. I absolutely must remember that. And remind us of your website, please. And how can people, if we have some full stack developers listening in, how can they apply?
Yeah, email me, and that's Sarah with an H, SARAH, at tryhealium.com. And our website is tryhealium.com. Helium is spelled like healing. So tryhealium.com.
Brilliant. We'll also put the links to your website and so forth at the bottom of the video when we publish. So that's great news. Thank you, Sarah, so much. And likewise, Tafi, I'm sorry to say we don't have too much time left, but what can we do to help if we have people from around the world listening in? And what are some of your ambitions for this year? Do you have any asks of the community in terms of fundraising or recruitment or clinical trials or what?
Yeah, no, big ambitions, and that comes with a real search for partnerships. So we're very keen to partner from a research perspective with institutions or universities that are based primarily on the continent. Also, commercial partnership is something that we're big on, especially within the insurance space. So that's huge for us. And we are coming up to a fundraise. So if there are any investors that are listening in, then certainly please do get in touch. And lastly, I think it's a message to the community around self-care, similar to Sarah. Entrepreneurs who I guess make up a big part of this audience are much more prone to mental health difficulties. I read a stat that 50% more likely to suffer from mental health difficulties. So it's really also a message to say, to take care and to seek intervention. It's a low bar to entry nowadays with digital.
That's a very good point, Tafi. Thanks for reminding everybody. I've just got my wallet out. You're looking to raise money. How much equity can I buy from you?
Just send it, and we'll do a safe agreement.
And don't listen to Sean regarding valuations. I'm sure that you're worth a lot more than he thinks you are.
Yeah, whatever Sean says, just multiply it by 3 and we've got a number.
Yeah, the Rand's been the most strongly performing currency of the year.
Right.
Oh, Tafi, thank you so much. And for me, it's been an honor to have you on this program. And I love what you're doing, obviously, likewise with you, Sarah. So, Sean, we're just going to wrap up now. If there's anything you'd like to announce to our community, any papers you're publishing, any areas you're looking to talk to in terms of entrepreneurs you'd like to engage with?
I would love if anyone interested in investing in the psychedelic community. We're closing up our fundraise in the middle of July, closing up our first fund. But even more importantly, we are on the lookout constantly for fantastic companies in both the psychedelic space, but those that can also overlap with the psychedelic space within the digital wellness space and the clinic space. So please do get in touch. Our website is neokuma.co. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you.
How do you spell your website, please, just in case people aren't clear on that?
neokuma.co.
Perfect. And your round, what size is the round? And are you looking for institutional investors, or is there a retail element?
We're not necessarily looking for institutionals at this stage. The fund is primarily high net worths and family offices. We have a minimum of £75,000 investment, and the round is got about £10 million left on it before we close up.
Super. Okay, well, very good news. And I'm certain we can help. We've been working, obviously, for 7 years building up our global community. That includes many thousands of active high net worth angel investors. So we'd love to share that with them. And we're very happy to champion what you guys are doing in our weekly newsletter, as well as the TV show.
Thank you very much. That would be amazing.
Hey, look, Sarah, what a pleasure to have you on the show, and good luck with everything that you're doing. Very, very proud of everything you've accomplished, and I think that your work is extremely important. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity to share. Great to see you all, and keep going.
Brilliant. Thank you. And likewise, Tafi, so nice to see you. Appreciate your time. Good luck with everything. And we're very keen to support you, like we are everybody who participates in this show. So please don't be shy. And we hope that you'll come back to us and give us an update on your successful progress. And good luck with your launch this year.
Thank you very much. And just to add, the website is www.vimbohealth.com. That's VIMBO health.com. So please do get in touch.
Excellent. And Sean, thank you so much. I'm happy to take 15% of all the investors that I bring to you. And so I think that's industry standard. But
that's the deal.
No, pardon me for being cheeky. You know, my only fee is a pint of Guinness and a raspberry daiquiri?
Margarita.
Raspberry margarita for Sarah. So thank you, Sean. Really loved having you on the episode. And I'm grateful for your time and very keen to keep in touch with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Barry.
And thank you once again to all of our listeners from around the world. This has been this week's episode of Healthy Innovators Live TV. These weekly shows are brought to you by Giant Health. Giant is an acronym. It stands for Global Innovation and New Technology. And we're a global community of nearly 200,000 people, everybody around the world whose business is healthcare, technology, and innovation. We'd like to thank our sponsors, which include Vodafone Business and Barclays Bank International. And we'd also like to thank our knowledge partner, McKinsey. We love working with all of our partners and sponsors, and we're very glad for your support. Lastly, I'd also like to pay reference to another one of our media partners, which is Startups Magazine. So if you are looking for more stories from inspirational entrepreneurs, check out The Serial Entrepreneur from Startups Magazine. That's a print and digital publication that champions tech startups. Here, their editor, Anna Flockett, interviews the most innovative startups of the moment with some startup lessons and failure fables, as well as a sprinkling of inspirational advice. You can find them by searching The Serial Entrepreneur in any streaming service or by going to startupsmagazine.co.uk. So thank you to Anna, and thank you to everybody at Startups Magazine. We love having you as a media partner. And thanks once again to our guest today. Thank you to our audience. We hope you found this interesting and informative, and we hope to hear from you. My name is Barry Shrier, and this has been this week's episode of Giants Healthy Innovators Live TV.